It had been some time since Charlie had been at the ranch in Matagorda County, on the humid coast of Texas. He wasn't looking for anything, and he wasn't running from anything. He did exactly what a cowboy was supposed to do. He kept the herd together, repaired fences, monitored the water in the troughs, and tried, as much as possible, not to let himself be eaten by the mosquitoes that rose from the tall grass at nightfall. The plains stretched out endless, flat and heavy with moisture. In the morning, fog rolled in from the Gulf of Mexico and settled over the land like a thin blanket. The cattle grazed peacefully, flicking their tails in a lazy, mechanical gesture to ward off pestering insects. The animals had to be fattened and prepared for the next long drive north, where the markets paid well and the grass was richer. Charlie didn't talk about himself. He had never been a man for stories. If asked, he answered briefly, leaving no room for follow-up. His name was enough. His past interested no one. Otherwise, he did his work thoroughly, without complaint or excess. And in his few hours of quiet, he would retreat somewhere to the edge of the camp, where the fire no longer brightly lit the men's faces. There, he would pull out his harmonica and play softly, old songs of love and longing. He didn't play for the others. He played for himself. One morning, the usual silence of the plain broke. The bulls were lowing heavily, and the cows moved restlessly, jostling one another. It wasn't the slow movement of a sated herd, but the blind agitation of frightened animals. The vaqueros leaped to their feet before the sun had fully cleared the horizon. "Storm?" someone muttered, looking south. Storms from the Gulf of Mexico came without warning and struck with a brief but destructive fury. But the sky was still calm, with only sparse, heavy, white clouds. They set out to check the range. They found no cattle fallen in ditches, no signs of lightning, or broken trees. Everything seemed in place. Until they began to count. A considerable number of animals were missing. It wasn't the work of a cougar. Nor coyotes. Wild beasts do not kill more animals than they can eat. And there were no traces of blood anywhere. Charlie dismounted and inspected the ground. In the still damp dust, horseshoe prints were visible. Several of them. Well-shod horses, arriving and departing in formation. The tracks led toward a low ravine, hidden among groves of coastal oaks. No one said a word. This wasn't an accidental theft. It wasn't the desperation of a lone man. It was the steady hand of organized cattle rustlers. At the edge of the ranch, where the plain broke into a grove of oaks twisted by the salty Gulf wind, lived an Indian who belonged fully neither to the land nor to the white men. He was tall and thin, with bony shoulders and economical, almost feline movements. He made no useless gesture. His black hair fell straight down his back, and sometimes he tied it at the nape of his neck with a thin leather strap. On his left arm he bore old scars etched in his youth, the marks of his tribe. He explained them to no one. Not because they were a secret, but because the world no longer had a place to put them. His eyes were gray-green, the color of the Gulf water before a storm. They watched without haste and without judgment, as if measuring not the man, but the wind around him. His clothes were a mix, work pants and a cotton shirt like the others, but over them, when the weather demanded, he wore a vest of soft, hand-stitched leather with short fringes that barely moved as he walked. Around his neck, he wore a polished bone amulet, the last thing left from his father. He didn't speak much, but he understood English. He answered rarely, and when he did, the words seemed chosen like good stones for a fire. His name was Hatak Akla, he who reads the wind. At the ranch, they called him simply Hawk. People said he was the last survivor of the Karankawa tribe. Maybe it was true. Maybe not. He neither confirmed nor denied it. He slept in a wattle shelter at a respectful distance from the stables. He asked for nothing. He took nothing. The white men left him in peace because he was useful and because he didn't ask for a wage. He received food, a good knife, and sometimes tobacco. It was enough. The Karankawa had been a people of salt water and lagoons, people of the shore who had lived along the Texas coast for centuries. Their canoes cut through the shallow bays, and the wind was their ally. They knew the marshes like the back of their hand and knew how to listen to the water. Then came the settlers. The diseases. The vendettas. The scalp hunting. In Hatak Akla's childhood, the tribe was no longer a tribe, but a gathering of scattered families. They were pushed from the lagoons into increasingly narrow areas, like animals hunted without paws. A conflict with a band of armed settlers was the last. It hadn't been a battle. It had been a pursuit. His father had died in the marsh, spear in hand, defending a patch of water that could no longer be defended. His mother died of fever the following year. Hatak was 17 then, and had already learned that sometimes survival means being the last one left. He wandered for years, living off fishing and hunting, avoiding towns. He learned to move among the white men without being seen. He learned that sometimes survival means belonging to no one anymore. One dry summer, 2 of the ranch's horses had become mired in a marsh. Hatak pulled them out alone, using a lasso in great patience. He asked for nothing in return. The owner saw everything and offered him food, and then occasional work. Hawk wasn't an official employee. He didn't sleep with the others. He had a separate shelter near the water. He kept his rituals, lighting the fire in the ancient way, murmuring songs in a language no one understood. In that low light, he seemed closer to the past than the present. When the horseshoe tracks were discovered in the damp dust of the plain, Charlie said nothing. He looked at the ground, measured the distance between steps, then raised his eyes toward the grove of oaks where he knew the Indian had his shelter. He found him sitting on a log, sharpening a long knife. The blade flashed briefly with every movement. Hatak Akla didn't look at him at first. He continued sharpening, listening perhaps to the wind, perhaps to the footsteps. "They came at night," Charlie said. The knife stopped. The Indian looked up. His eyes were the color of a storm that had not yet broken. He nodded before Charlie's words could fully take shape. It wasn't a gesture of haste, but one of understanding, as if the explanation merely confirmed something he already knew. They set out together toward the edge of the range. The dry grass rustled under their feet, and the wind brought the smell of stagnant water and salt. Charlie pointed to the horseshoe tracks that cut through the earth and descended toward the ravine. Hawk leaned down without a word. He touched the soil with his fingertips, as if touching the forehead of a sick child. He rubbed the dust between his fingers. He caught the scent of the air. He traced the direction of the flattened grass, the way the blades were broken, not just pressed down. His gaze wasn't searching, it was gathering. The silence lasted as long as a deep breath. Then he said slowly, without raising his voice, 5 horses. One carries weight on its hind legs. It shows in the depth of the print. They are not from nearby. They don't know the place well, they circled for a while looking for the way. His words were not spectacular. They were simple, but they fell heavy, like well-placed stones.